The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, and Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right, getting rolling. Big morning for Nebraska football as they have their first scrimmage of the fall slated to get going. Some movers and shakers to maybe solidify, to distance, or to make some of the position coaches rethink. We'll talk a little bit about what's been going on with camp up to this point. We had a great chat yesterday with Coach Gerry DiNardo, Big Ten Network. He's been out camping. There's a joke somewhere in there about camping that Rick Barnes once told somebody. We'll leave that one be. But the long and short, Kraynak, is DiNardo's seen Nebraska, their seventh practice when he was on site Thursday. And he has seen Northwestern when they were just done with their practice. And it'll be good insight. It was a good chance to get caught up with him. In hour two, Brandon Vogel will be with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine, managing editor. Get his thoughts on where the Big Red's at. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, will join us. So you can jump in. Dial us up if you so choose. 466-3776. 466-3776. 800-825-5865. Can also find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt, that's me. At Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel on Twitter. And email Chris at HailVarsity.com. The radio show Twitter handle is at HVarsity Radio. Did I get that right?
Nailed it.
Got that right. Kraynak, good to be with you, bud. How long has it been? It feels quite a while.
Yeah, well, it's one of the, I dial in via one of these video chat services. There are several. I'm not going to mention the one because that they don't pay us. And according to that, it was July 23rd was the last time I used it. Today being the 6th. Thank you, Youth Sports. I mean, that's primarily the reason.
Totally get it. We're both on the same page there, but we aren't airing this morning's show. We may do that for Brandon Vogel at 8 o'clock on StreamYard, which you usually find on ESPN Lincoln's Twitter handle or Facebook. Just not feeling it this segment. But Kraynak's in his home office, got the big red end behind his right shoulder, and rocking the Braves hat. Elijah's chained to the studio. I'm from home. Elijah and I had a chance to go to the Hail Varsity Club last night, and we'll be there.
Oh, you were there
Fridays.
last night too. Okay.
Yeah. We were there leading. We'll be there leading up till you and me, Kraynak, depart for Dublin. And so, that's where you got to be if you're in Omaha, or you want to just take a little roadie from Lincoln up to Omaha and see us 4 to 6. Great happy hour. I had this Cubana sandwich that is a normal Cuban that had your cheese, your mustard, your pickle, and your ham. But it also had short rib.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes,
how come
right.
Nobody thought of that before. And by the way, can we just stop and witness the empire that the Nebraska Sportscaster of the Year has built for himself? He now has a restaurant and bar in La Vista. He's got the show is moved to 590 in Omaha weekdays, 4 to 6 p.m. What is next? It's just, it's kind of your world. We're living in it. It's good to be in it.
It's going to be called Schmidt and Kraynak Locked Up Abroad in Dublin. We're going to have to be sending a rescue flare
to right now. Stop that.
We're going to have to send a rescue.
See what they did to Brittany?
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. We're going to have to send a rescue flare to Biden or whoever. Pete, can you help us out? We're really Cub fans, I promise. Despite Kraynak's Atlanta hat, we need out of here now. Those aren't mine. I don't know how they got there.
Dude, 3 weeks from today. 3 weeks from today, that's going to be happening.
Mary Cobbler, you and me.
Yeah, a place called the Mary Cobbler, which is, that's the most Irish AF thing ever. If you're going to come up with a name, of a pub, the Mary Cobbler, that sounds like, I don't know what kind of accent that was. We got to work on our Irish accent as well. That's very difficult to pull off.
Yeah,
that
Schmidts have needed to do that for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, the New Orleans accent and the Irish accent are just like, forget it. Like, how do you even... Like, what is the New Orleans one, by the way? Not to sidetrack here, but let's sidetrack significantly. That's like New York, Southern, and like French all in one. And how do you
even... A little bit.
It's not easy.
Yeah, it comes out sudden just like Brian Kelly, too. It's incredible.
it's just incredible. Right, that's how you do it. Yeah. My family.
My family.
I do declare.
Okay, have we not reached the time, by the way? This happens all the time. When you have a role like this and you do Husker talk for some part of your living, you get these questions all the time. What's your prediction? What do you think? What's going to happen this year with the squad? And I'm sitting here, you're like, okay, it's always hard to do it because we're so close to it, right? And we follow it all the time. There's a little bit of bias. Like, you don't really, so that in and of itself makes it a little difficult. But people are seriously asking you to know, hey, how is it going to work out with an offensive coordinator from Pitt, a quarterback from Texas, a top receiver from LSU, and a JUCO running back? How's that going to go? You're like, I don't know. The odds are not very good, but if it does happen, great. Honestly,
we left out that. We left out, how's it going to also work with a surgically repaired knee to your best offensive lineman who started one game, and another
an offensive
guy,
line coach that's just playing. It's his first ever head job for that role.
And I don't think from a drilling standpoint, Raiola's experience is going to be detrimental. Well, I think he'll get the guys ready, but yeah, you got Corcoran and Teddy that you're wondering about, and can the offensive line figure it out, because that is so monster for this season.
But really think about that, we all know
you just laid
facts.
It out. Give me a reason why can't they win 8, Kraynak? Why can't they get 9? Why can't they get 6? 6 is horrible. And what you just laid out there, this is this is an interesting mold job that needs to happen quickly, and you're grabbing from everywhere. You mentioned the different accents. You're grabbing from all parts of the world here in the college football world.
Really. We all know these facts individually, but things are emerging to a point to where you can kind of see, it's probably going to be Casey Thompson starting. Mm-hmm. Pretty sure Trey Palmer is going to be one of the top targets. So that's Texas, and that's LSU right there last year, right? Running back, guy that was at Florida State, then at JUCO. Anthony Grant appears to be the front runner. You got Mark Whipple, who was at Pitt last year. The chances of that all melding together beautifully from the get-go across the ocean, for crying out loud, in week 1 against, look, they weren't the best last year, but history would tell you that Pat Fitzgerald's defense is going to be pretty good. History would tell you that. Don't know if that'll be the case this year because they were bad last year. But I'm sure that pissed them off, and I'm sure they fixed some things. The chances of all that working well aren't good. They're just not. They're not saying it's impossible. Could happen. Michigan State kind of did the same thing last year. They fused together a lot of disparate parts and turned it into something good. But this developmental program, which I think we all agree Nebraska kind of has to be, is like this developmental program.
Yep.
This year they're not. They're a team of mercenaries. That's what's up, man.
You got to develop the folks that have been hired quickly. Mm-hmm. And when we hear from Frost yesterday, it sounds like the guys that were here have connected well with the new hires, and I'm sorry, new hires, but NIL. And the new hires are respecting the territory / wise words of how it's been here. Sounds like that's going okay, and that's not always the case when you have new and old trying to mix.
We probably wouldn't hear differently, though.
No,
if it wasn't.
I understand that. But if he's going,
you probably wouldn't hear. Well, actually,
they hate
Sean
each
and
other.
Garrett aren't getting along really well, and
that's not the case. But
right.
if he's willing to tell me 5 minutes earlier it's Whip's show, then all right, maybe that's a good precursor of an honest sit down.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, hey, it's Whip's show. Hey, it's Casey's job to lose. By the way, the young and the old, they're melding well.
I mean, the way I look at it is I really think it's a boom or bust type year. I don't know if you're going to have an in-between mediocre year. And I'm only saying that from like a team chemistry and like motivational standpoint, right? So like imagine they do perform well because those individual parts have talent and skill. Mm-hmm. There's no question about that. Anthony Grant looks good, right? Palmer can fly. Casey Thompson's got experience, plus he's got, the bloodlines, all those things. Whipple's been there, done that, right? Like, so you got guys that these aren't chumps. Nobody's saying that. But putting it all together is a different story. So like if you get to say mid-October and you're like 6-2, something like that, right? Or you're a 5-3 even. Like if you're like a respectable record at that point, you could probably keep it together, right? You could probably keep it together, and I bet you guys will be rowing in the same direction, and like team chemistry will be solid. But if you're like middling, if you're 4-4, if you're a 3-4, that thing could tailspin in a hurry. I just think that's the kind of year you're looking at. You're looking at probably a boom or a bust. I don't think it's going to be a mediocre year no matter what. Because if things aren't working out, this team of mercenaries is not likely to, batten down the hatches with one another and count on all the trust they've built over the years, because they haven't. Only been here for a few months.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's the case where, and maybe just a few have been here for a few months. I think it's going to be up to Garrett Nelson. It's going to be up to a Trent Hickson. All right. And it's going to be up to a Newsom and a Farmer. And absolutely, for sure, those two inside backers, Henrich and Reimer, to whether it's hurricane season or it's the best weather you've ever seen. It's up to those guys to make sure it is like vacation versus you're going into a storm. And I'm not sure that you're off. I mean, I think that boomer bust take is very fair. Now, I think the optics of what happens on Saturday, if you just get beat by someone making a play, think about that. Think about Sooner Magic. God forbid on a Saturday morning if you're hungover. But a lot of times OU just make a play. Pretty even ball game. Maybe Nebraska was out-talented for the most part. But guess what? Dude, Keith Jackson would make a play. Buster Rhymes would make a play. Elvis Bleepin' Peacock would make a play. And you're just like, these guys are going to go win the national title. It's 21-17. That's how it shook out. Son of a beep. And that's not soothing, but okay, you can accept dying that way on a Saturday. because you got beat by a better team, or you were right there for it. You weren't fumbling. You weren't giving up punt returns. You weren't throwing picks. You weren't being stupid with the football. That, to me, that's the big thing, is how does this thing look? How does 6-6 look? Is there a world where 6-6 is acceptable and it's clean football? I don't know that you're going to get clean football with 6-6, right? Mm-mm. But 6-6 would be cleaner football than you've had in the past, because they've had teams that should have been at 6 or 7 in the past. So to me, to get that to that 7 or 8 win number, you're going to see a much cleaner football, and it sounds like you will if Bill Bush has anything to say about it. And then it's okay. And then that boom or bust part of your thought is more leaning towards boom, because people are doing their job, they're executing, and Nebraska's not helping aid the other team like they've done the last 5 years. To me, it's what I think what it looks like is going to be a bigger factor for me than the number at the end of the year.
That'll be a big key. And that's part of why Frost came back, is because the way it looked in general, outside of those like fatal errors that would happen once or twice a game and just destroy everything. That seems fixable.
If Nebraska played clean football in 2021, you'd think their record would be what? At least 7-5? 7-5 at the worst. If they had played clean football, more likely 8-4 with all the close losses.
Yeah, fixed special teams, right? Like that alone probably gets you to 7-5.
That's 2 games a year since 17.
Yeah. Look, that stuff all matters. Here's the other big factor, and this is on Frost in particular. So he's going to be at the helm of this ship. There's always pressure as the Nebraska head coach, of course. There's always that pressure. But there is existential pressure on him this year. He knows it. The team knows it. The AD knows it. All the fans know it. Him keeping his cool and not ratcheting up that pressure, having that trickle down. You know, this is super intangible psychobabble crap I'm talking about here, but it's real. I mean, it's real. Like, that dude is going to have to convey a degree of confidence and calmness and, like, everything is going to be okay type demeanor. He's going to have to convey that for that to trickle down, and that's not going to be easy, right? Because the dude knows.
You've been asked to delegate, Kraynak.
Yeah.
You got to keep your calm and cool, and you call the plays, you run the offense. I'll just make sure everyone's got what they need. And that's hard, man. That's hard anyway, and it's hard to do in a year you got to win.
Especially, I mean, how often have we seen where I honestly can't think of a situation where the way that contract was structured, and it bears repeating for those that maybe just haven't followed it as closely. But, you know, his buyout, if you're going to fire him, it changes October 1st in the middle of the season.
After a bye, isn't it? Going into a bye?
We all know that. Right? Like, we've seen that. We know that. We know that's a fact. But have you heard of that before? I can't think of another coaching situation where that was the case. I mean, that's as close to an ultimatum as you're ever going to see in the coaching profession, where it's like literally mid-season, October 1st. Trev could have changed that. Trev could have made that December 1st. He could have made that November 1st. He made it October 1st, which is very clearly saying, you better look like you have a damn team the beginning part of the season.
Get it figured out.
This thing's done.
Get it figured out. Get your hires and rehires and new staff guys figured out, and then get it up and running between summer, fall camp, and show me by October you know what the hell you're doing.
I mean, mid-season. Like, that's not an accident. Trev could have very easily said December 1st, that's saying we are committed to Coach Frost and this staff, however he wants to stack it, through the end of the year. We believe in him, and that He could have said that. Could have done that. Instead, he's like, Northwestern, Georgia Southern, North Dakota, Oklahoma. You better show me that you guys got a clue. Right? I mean, that's what he's saying. These first 4 or 5 games, these are not tune-up, warm-up games. These are keep your job audition games. I mean, dude, that's pressure. That is a lot of pressure, right? That's a ton of pressure. And on top of that, you're taking this show to Europe to start the year against a guy that's won Big Ten Coach of the Year, 48 times? I feel like Pat Fitzgerald wins that thing like every other year. I know he doesn't, but right? It's a lot. It's a lot that they have to deal with, and Frost has to withstand all of that and still convey confidence to his team and get them in a position to where they can actually perform against all of these odds. And good luck with that. I hope it works well.
Great luck with it. I'll say this, though. It's not going to do you any good to freak out and start worrying about October 1st. No. Easier said than done. But I think
you know it's there.
Yeah, because I think a clean step, though, is him yesterday saying it's whip show. That was big to me, because it's, I don't want to call it an admission, but it was a public statement of support.
Yeah.
Or a public statement of acknowledgement that, it's whip and he's got the offense, and my strategy was probably not the best. I was probably in the way, and it was selfish, and that's okay, because, dude, that was your baby. That's what made you what you are.
Mm-hmm. It's what everybody wanted.
Yeah, well, it's from when you started coaching, dude. You're this hot shot, high flying, high scoring. Yeah, I'll be over here. It's my ass, but you guys go do your thing. I trust you.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear Trev talk a lot about being uncomfortable. Front and center, man.
And then I know we got to get out in a couple minutes here before Gerry DiNardo joins us on the rewind, and then you look at defensively, and I think Chinander has developed a degree of trust with the team, with the program, with the fan base, even with how they performed last year. But you can't overlook how critically important it was for them to have all of those 6th-year guys.
Oh, big time.
I mean, what were the hallmarks of that defense last year? It was a stable, smart,
tough,
in position,
tough defense.
Tough. Yeah, right. Like, not a lot of busts last year, right? A couple missed tackles here and there on dudes trying to have the highlight shoulder hits. Mm-hmm. But other than that, pretty sound. And that's directly related to having a Doman, a Ben Stilley, a Deontay Williams, a Dismuke, guys that have been here a long time and just had it all figured out. You remove those guys from the situation now. You don't bring back near that amount of experience. So they benefited from that greatly last year. So I think Gerry's still out to a degree on the defense too. Like, how do you do when you don't have that advantage of all these 6-year guys?
Well, have you been able, did that 6-year allow you to bridge and develop some guys to step in and do the job? Or are you going to be in trouble from an experience standpoint because you're still not ready? I think Chin's shown he can develop and get guys ready. Weekend edition, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel. Quick timeout. What's Coach DiNardo think of Nebraska and Northwestern? He's seen them both. He's seen them both in camp. They collide here 3 weeks from today. His thoughts from last night at the Hail Varsity Club. We'll rewind next with Hail Varsity Radio.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Now back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, with Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. Hour 2, we're here at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista, just between Cabela's and the Embassy Suites. We welcome in the coach. Good to talk with him again, Gerry DiNardo, Big Ten Network. At Gerry DiNardo on Twitter is where you find Coach. Coach, you packed for camp. You've been to Lincoln, and you were down at Northwestern today. How you doing?
Well, we're doing great. We're doing week 0. We go to Illinois tonight and watch their practice tomorrow. Then we head east to Rutgers and do the Eastern swing. But we've had 2 really good stops. Interesting that obviously Nebraska and Northwestern open up together. So it was, and Nebraska's it was practice 7. Northwestern was practice 8. So we've got to see them at the exact time and the exact same time in their schedule. And it was a great way to start the tour because those 2 teams open up on week 0.
Well, we have our bags packed for Ireland and had a chance to spend some time with Coach Frost after practice today. Big scrimmage for Nebraska tomorrow. Coach, I want to get your take on week 0 and going to Ireland. First and foremost, you've been a head coach a number of years in your career. How daunting a task is not only week 0, but week 0 abroad?
Yeah, as a coach, you always want to try to figure out, what's most important for the team. Experience like that. I can remember being in Indiana, and they wanted us to play in Hawaii, and the only reason I turned it down it was one of the recruiting weekends that we had in Bloomington, and we couldn't waste a weekend to recruit, so I turned it down. I think this is a great opportunity for both teams, but, I have to say, especially after talking to Coach Frost and Coach Fitz and watching what was going on, it's post-game that makes the trip most difficult. Before you can adjust your clock going, right, and you can figure all that out, but when you come back and Nebraska has a game and Northwestern doesn't, by way of example, Fitz is going to give his guys 2 days off when they get back. I mean, nothing. Just get used to the clock. Whereas Nebraska's got to get ready for North Dakota. And so, I'm sure Scott thought through this and decided it was a good idea, but it's tough duty when they get back. And North Dakota, as we all know, only people that know football know that's a really good team.
Gerry DiNardo's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, and I just want to ask about this trip itself, getting out there to Northwestern. How do you keep the team focused during that time? It's a long journey out there. You're going to have the jet lag and a lot of fun things to do out in Dublin, but at the end of the day, it's about going and winning a football game. How do you keep a team focused on that task?
Well, you don't just do it when you leave. I mean, there's a big sign right now on Northwestern's practice field that says, Nebraska 22 days, I believe. I believe that's the number. These guys are pretty worldly. They're pretty mature. Both these teams have a lot to prove. Both these teams have come off seasons that weren't what they wanted it to be. And I think sometimes, unless you're around these guys a lot, you sell them short. They're pretty mature. They understand how important this game is. They understand how important this season is. They're both trying to rebound from last year. I don't think you have to say much. I think you have to say, hey, when there's something touristy, let's enjoy it. We don't have to walk around without game face. You're allowed to laugh. You're allowed to have fun. But when the time comes and it's the day before the game, we're going to hunker down. We're going to watch a lot of video. We're going to get a lot of rest, and we're going to play like hell game day.
Gerry DiNardo's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, at Gerry DiNardo on Twitter, Big Ten Network, lead analyst. And, of course, you see him with kickoff and the bus tour going on. Coach, what was your takeaway with Coach Frost's demeanor as you had a chance to sit down with him yesterday after practice?
Yeah, I love talking to Coach Scott. I mean, we talk during practice, and I just really always enjoy our conversations. And, it's a lot of fun. And I think I said this on Twitter. I never take for granted that these coaches allow us to watch practice. It's a unique opportunity for a unique type of media, which we are. We're actually business partners, and the great majority of our coaches, including Scott, treat us that way. That some way we're partners, and there's a lot of trust. We don't say some things that we see that are obviously not known to the public. I thought the practice was really good. I compared it to last year's practice, and I always couch this opinion because I wasn't overly impressed last year at practice, but who knows? No coach has ever said we've never had a bad practice. It could have been tired legs. I don't remember when it was, but I do remember after yesterday's practice, looking at that practice and saying, wow, that was a really good practice. I don't remember feeling the same way a year ago. Now, it was practice number 7 for Nebraska. They've got new coaches. There's a lot of things going on. I think everyone feels a sense of urgency. So my guess is it really was a better practice than last year. But again, who knows what happened last year? They could have had tired legs, or it could have been a different day in the week.
Coach, let's talk about quarterback play for Nebraska. Coach made it pretty clear that it's Casey Thompson's job to lose, but there's a lot of competition in that quarterback room with Coach Whipple. And your impression of that quarterback spot for Nebraska moving forward?
Yeah, I think this is, tough times when you transfer a quarterback in and he's eligible right away, which is the new college football, right? Because I think the fans get all excited. They look at his stats and, they maybe expect too much. And so I would say, I thought Casey had a good practice. It was only one practice. But, just like any quarterback, you look at, Martinez, who left, if you just looked at his numbers, you'd say, wow. But, there were times during a game when some quarterback mistakes cost them a game. So we don't know that part of Casey Thompson. I say this, I can watch the drills, I'm very well coached, I can watch the team practices, I can watch the emphasis on special teams. But until Nebraska plays, we won't know if they're going to win the close game, which I would expect the first game to be close, and are they going to perform in special teams, and is the quarterback going to be mistake-free or close to mistake-free? Those are the three things that you really can't tell in a practice, but you can tell those are going to be the three things that dictate the success or failure of Nebraska's season.
Coach, what can you glean from a practice? You mentioned all these things that you don't know. Is there anything that whenever you go on this tour and you go to the practices, can you get the sense from a practice of, this team's going to be good based on, say, this or this?
Yeah, this is great, Elijah. This is spot on, right? I've been asked this question 100 times. So the first thing you do is you walk around and you try to assess the talent, right? So I walked around. I think Nebraska's offensive line, I think they're fine. I think they're as good as 2/3 of the teams that they're going to play, or they're as good, maybe not better. Then obviously you look at the quarterback, you look at Shannon's defense. They've improved every year. You expect them to improve again. But to answer your question, big picture-wise, after watching these two teams, and I made this comment today after practice, I wouldn't be surprised if the winner of this game in Dublin is decided on the last play of the game. So when you get a look at the personnel, they're pretty balanced. I'd say maybe Northwestern has an edge in the defensive line. Maybe they're equal in the offensive line. They both have somewhat of a question at quarterback. Nebraska has the better defense coming back. Northwestern really struggled on defense. Northwestern, pretty good run game, pretty good backfield depth, maybe in Nebraska. So you just try to go to each group, evaluate the talent as it's relative. Now, I have to tell you, when we go to Ohio State, it looks like they're playing a different game. That's how much different their talent is, right? There's absolutely no comparison. And then you watch the team period and try to see how efficient they can be on offense, defense, and special teams.
A few more minutes here. Gerry DiNardo with us, Hail Varsity Radio, live here at the Hail Varsity Club. Coach DiNardo, Big Ten Network, couple of tours already with Big Ten camp season in Lincoln yesterday, Northwestern this morning. So, Coach, you touched on special teams, and we really like Bill Bush. We've known Bill for a while, and I think his attention to detail on top of his recruiting acumen is going to be big for Nebraska. What did you glean from special teams? Because Bill can talk to us after practice and make it sound great, and I believe what he says, but there's a renewed emphasis. You and I both know that it's cost Nebraska a lot of ball games. Based on what you've seen, that little grain of salt, do you think it'll be better where it won't be a detriment this year for Nebraska?
Yeah, I feel for sure it'll be better for a couple of reasons. If there's any competitiveness to this team, it has to be better. And I mean, let's face it, I don't know that you can get a scholarship to major college football without being a competitor. I don't think you can coach in an environment like Nebraska that it is so important to everybody in the state where you don't have a competitive edge. So just the fact that you would will it to be better after last year's semi-embarrassment. So that's one reason. The pure nature of the competitive spirit of somebody that would sign a scholarship with Nebraska. The second thing would be there's a lot of different ways to organize special teams. And obviously, when we went to practice, this is one of the things I wanted to find out, right? I wanted to find out about special teams. So I like the way it's organized. There's a lot of different ways, but the way they have it organized is obviously Coach Bush is in charge of it. But then he delegates certain positions to the rest of the coaches. So there's only 2 coaches, I believe, Scott told me. Don't hold me to that, but I think it's true that everybody but 2 coaches are involved with special teams, with Coach Bush being the head coach of the special teams. And that's a really good way, in my opinion, to break it down. When I was at Colorado, I was in charge of the left guard and the left tackle on the punt team. Now, I'll be darned if I couldn't get those 2 guys to do something right. And if I couldn't get those 2, if I couldn't get 2 people to do something right on one team, then there was something wrong with me, not the players. And so that's the kind of attention to detail. The other thing is, how much the head coach talks about it. Scott went over to the special teams field when they were doing special teams. So those are kind of, body language type of things, I think that, to me, they put the correct emphasis on it. And, I just loved what they were doing on special teams and the way they were coaching it.
How about Whipple taking over on offense? It's Whipple's show. That's what Scott said. I think it's been hard for Coach Frost to completely walk away from it. You're an offensive coordinator, Coach. How much you love calling plays and putting game plans together. How do you foresee that shaking out? I think Whipple's seen and done it all, and I think he's a really good quarterback tutor.
Well, I think it's more difficult now than ever with coordinators as a head coach. First of all, they're becoming generationally wealthy, and so sometimes they don't think, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. I'll buy another condo on the beach, and sometimes the choices are a young guy who wears a visor, thinks he's a genius, stands on the sidelines because his agent told him he has to be on TV, or there's an older guy who wants to run the program, but he's an assistant coach. And so it's really difficult. I would say my experience with older coordinators is they bring a great deal of wealth, but it's not their program. It's the head coach's program. And when you get a guy like Phil Parker at Iowa, who is, I don't think he wants any other job. I don't think he wants to be the head coach at Iowa. And that's one of the reasons that makes him great. He's not aspiring to be on the sidelines. He's not aspiring to be a head coach. He's a total great X&O guy who's loyal to Kirk Ferentz. And if Mark Whipple fits that model, well, then they have a chance to make it work. But again, both of these groups bring a lot of baggage with them, the young genius and the old guy who wants to run the program.
Coach Gerry DiNardo is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Coach, I know you can't tell us everything you saw at practice, so I want to more dive into your history as a coach here. with Mark Whipple coming in, installing his offense through the spring, now you're getting into fall camp, trying to put some of the finishing touches on it. I mean, how much of this playbook do you think is going to be open for Nebraska whenever they go on the road, get off to Dublin, and play week 0 against Northwestern? Is this thing going to be close to a finished product, or is there still going to be work that needs to be done through the first couple weeks of the season?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it was a finished product. And when you say finished product, it kind of leads you to think, is the whole offense in? I think everyone goes into the first game with a finished product of the basics, right? There's going to be plays that they run against Northwestern in Dublin that they will run in their bowl game, okay? There's going to be a core number of plays that'll go from game 1 to their last game of the season, and I think it'll be a bowl game. But in between there'll be game plan adjustments, there'll be tweaks, there'll be special plays. Like they may be, they're not going to practice a gadget play when we're there, right? Even though we're good partners, it's just that it's not smart, right? So they may put 10 trick plays in during camp. Well, obviously they're not going to run 10 trick plays against Northwestern, and so that's kind of how you do it. The finished product is there's a finished core project. How many times do you want the quarterback to run? It's 2 times a quarter. That's usually what spread coaches want to do. Are you going to run them at all? What's your red zone philosophy? All those things will be pretty solid going into the first one. And then as they learn more about their personnel, as they manage their injuries, and they manage how much the players can take new input, then the package will grow. And so it's a great question because it's one of the most difficult and important decisions you make as you implement and let packages grow on both sides of the ball. Now, Eric's got great advantage, right? I asked him yesterday, of all the things that have happened since Coach Frost has been there, the defense has steadily improved. Why? And what he said was, same terminology, basically the same scheme. We've done the same things over and over again. And that's what Iowa does on defense. Not a lot has changed about the Iowa defense, and it's one of the best defenses in the country.
Gerry DiNardo with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Big Ten Network camp season for Coach at Nebraska yesterday, Northwestern this morning. Off to see Coach Bielema and the Illini a little bit later. Last thought, Coach, my mother is over in Italy. Any restaurant recommendations, my friend?
There is one that I have, and it's in Rome. I don't have it offhand, but I could sure as heck text it to you. But interesting you bring that up, Chris. I asked both Fitz and Coach Frost if they regretted that the game was in Dublin and not Rome.
And their answer?
Well, Coach Frost said he loves Rome. He's been there, and Fitz says, "My name's Fitzgerald. I mean, what do you think?" No.
put it. Wherever. Rome would be cool in the old arena, or Dublin. But no, text me that. My mom will be in Rome sometime as she's touring Italy, and I'll make sure she gets Coach's recommendation.
I'll do it.
Take care, Coach. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey, it's Schmidt. Want to tell you about a fantastic opportunity to work for a rapidly growing company that also enjoys the benefits earned with having competitive, stable history of work over 20 years. FSC. The FSC Edge. It's a leading technology innovator serving governmental agencies. Expert services helping worldwide patent offices meet strict processing and publishing timelines while delivering exceptional quality. They support some of the world's largest patent offices throughout the U.S. and Europe. That includes the European Patent Office, the German Patent and Trademark Office, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. The only group of companies worldwide to provide such support to all 3 of these agencies. Working at FSC, you have a chance to work with fun people with great attitudes and learn about patents. You're not on the phone, you're not customer-facing, it's casual dress, and the work environment, it's a new environment with over $2 million in improvements. You have access to generous benefits packages, company support for health and wellness, and you do impactful work on a national scale. Make a difference. Their team's constantly growing, and they're always looking for new people to join their mission. Check out what's available today at jobs@fsc.com.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend edition, hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, Brandon Vogel back in his football office. We're streaming live this morning on ESPN Lincoln's Facebook, ESPN Lincoln's Twitter handle. So if you got your mobile device handy, you can see our smiling, beautiful faces. It's easier for me to say. We may hear or see a German Shepherd in the near future when she gets done doing her thing. Brandon Vogel is nodding and approving. Vogues, good morning, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're going to be better in 2 seconds. Elijah, did you just get shocked, Elijah?
Let's try it. Is that better?
Talk again, Vogues.
I'm still doing well, thank you.
Lord, oh.
I don't hear Brandon. I don't hear Elijah.
But you sound like you have 17 microphones, Kraynak. Take 2. Better now? Should we just reconnect on the phone here?
Now I'm doing that.
See, Vogue sounds like he's getting electrocuted, and that's not fun for anybody.
I am efforting.
That's fine.
I'm trying everything I can.
We're set up here. Weekend edition kicked off. We have fumbled the snap, Kraynak. We have fumbled the snap. But we're
start going under center.
Right, or inside the 5, hopefully. We'll try one more time. You give me a thumbs up or throw something at the screen, Elijah, when you think we're ready for Vogue.
Let's try it.
Okay. Vogues, I like the Hail Varsity hat.
Oh, thank you. This is fumbled snap. Not ideal. We'll hope that Nebraska's 2022 season doesn't open that way.
Absolutely. What did you take away from Frosty yesterday? Did it seem or feel just like just another post-practice, or did you read more into it just with what was said? Because a lot of things were touched on, leadership for sure, Whipple's running the show, and, of course, the quarterback race with Casey's job to lose.
I think the most relevant piece of information there was the update on the quarterback situation, and I think it's been interesting how Nebraska has played this. I didn't come into fall camp, which I guess I'll consider Big Ten Media Days as the start of that, thinking this thing was necessarily settled. I mean, we could all look at it from afar, and the coaches are looking from it up close, obviously, and say, well, that's your most experienced guy. That experience probably matters. So he was always the favorite, but I thought it'd be a little bit closer. So it's become interesting to me to kind of how Nebraska has played its hand here in saying from Big Ten Media Days, he has a leg up, to we're 2 weeks in now, and the coaches are saying he's the guy to beat. So, that seems like a conscious choice from my perspective of being like, we've got a league game in week 1 or week 0 in this case, and we think it's important to establish who is going to take that first snap and hopefully not fumble it like I did.
Brandon Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine managing editor at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. And, yeah, it's really important to kind of give some directives. You've got a big scrimmage this morning for Nebraska, and it's a chance to settle in or extend some confidence in your position groups. Things that I really kind of was intrigued by earlier in the week was what we had a chance to see, just a little snippet and glimpse with the open practice with Teddy Prohaska at left tackle and Turner Corcoran at left guard. Vogues, want to get your thoughts there on, okay, it's not set in stone, and Frost said so as much yesterday, that they're still mixing and matching guys at different spots. They'll need a swing tackle, they'll need a swing guard, they'll need backups. But if it holds to form, if where you have Teddy and Turner with Hickson, and then a Bando at right guard, and then you're able to get Benhart to be where you think he was going to be at this point when he came out of high school. How does that line grab you?
Pretty good. I mean, there's obviously a lot to prove from really all of those players, but on paper, that certainly looks like probably Nebraska's best 5 to me. And obviously we don't, haven't seen some of those new additions yet for ourselves, or at least not a whole lot of them, and how that all works. But if that's the 5, it kind of plays out to form, I think, when we knew that Corcoran was sort of the swing guy. So you've got 3 tackles, at least that's what they were coming out of high school, who are among the 7 most talented offensive linemen, period, Nebraska signed since 2011, based on their 24/7 composite rating. We haven't seen Benhart or Corcoran truly kind of get to that level, but they're obviously talented guys. And then Nebraska is not far behind them. Center and right guard, then you've got 2 6-year seniors. And again, I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that you're opening with a conference opponent again. And we didn't hear, situations are different year to year, of course, but I don't recall hearing a lot of talk about, hey, this is Illinois in week 1. It's a different level. You're hearing that a lot now, and it's kind of stuck with me.
Brandon Vogel's with us here on a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, now that we're a week through camp, the first scrimmage of the fall camp being today, what are some storylines you're either expecting to hear or you want to hear out of the first scrimmage today, whether it be Casey Thompson taking the first team reps or the offense looking better than expected? What is it that you're expecting to hear, or I guess hoping to hear from today?
Yeah, I think from this first scrimmage, one of the big pieces, and we heard from the position coach this week, but running backs remains one of the most interesting. I don't know if it's a battle, but how that all fits together with the primary guys that they're going to use in the backfield. That's one of the more interesting pieces. We heard from Shenander on the first day of post-practice availability, and we'll hear from him again next week. But it feels like it's been a bit. I feel like we've had a little bit of a dearth of defense of late, and that's an interesting group too. With what they have to replace, with what they did to try and replace that. And you've got a really, really good linebacking core, but shuffling pieces at defensive line and the secondary, obviously. So I'm actually pretty anxious, and I don't know if a lot of this will come from the scrimmage necessarily, but I'm pretty anxious to hear about just where they think the defense is at and how some of those position battles are shaking out.
It's interesting with the secondary. We know that Farmer and Newsom are guys that have had time and performed decently, but they're going to be asked to perform at a whole different level. The linebackers love hearing Coach Rude and his decisive win in the mustache poll earlier this week with Hail Varsity Radio. That poll was, he just ran the score up on Elijah, quite frankly, whose mustache was better, Barrett Rude's or Elijah Herbel's, and it was Rudy by a landslide. And then we get to that depth, right, behind Henrich, behind Reimer. And Vogues, what's realistic for Ernest Hausman? What's realistic for Snodgrass? What's realistic for Vaugh? We've heard a lot about Vaugh, but do you like those bodies, those options behind 2 guys that combined for 200 tackles?
Yeah, I mean, the development or kind of the emergence of Maga Clemens, I think, is a very good one for Nebraska. That one, we're all kind of taking what we're told at face value at this stage because we haven't had that much opportunity to see it for ourselves. But that's a guy who's been in the program for a while now. It's his time. So if that's truly how things are unfolding there, then good news for Nebraska. Hausman, I think he's a really interesting prospect. He was a really interesting prospect coming out of high school, probably a little undervalued, maybe more than a little. And we saw a player like Reimer play right away as a true freshman, primarily on special teams, but he was also playing in that Ohio State game in 2020, the first game in the most extreme circumstances, probably in terms of off the field stuff and just everything it took to get there that you're going to find. And he even kind of flashed there in a little bit. So I think Hausman has a chance to play and could be in the mix there. And Snodgrass is kind of in a similar boat. He's a guy who's been in the program for a while too. They feel good about those top two guys. So knowing that gives you a little bit of freedom to really make an impact in maybe a reduced number of snaps for some of those guys. And if they come in with that mindset, you have a chance to really bolster Nebraska's defense.
Related to the linebacker spot is kind of that hybrid role that JoJo Domann played. Is it your sense that Nebraska will try to, was that more specific to Domann? Or are they thinking that they are just going to do sort of a one-for-one switch with, say, a Javen Wright or Chris Kolarovich?
Yeah, I think it was a little specific to Domann. He had such a unique skill set and, body type that somebody like Wright, you could see maybe that being a little bit more of a one-to-one transition. For someone like Kolarovic, wasn't. He was an inside linebacker last year, and he was a really good inside linebacker at Northern Illinois. So the fact that he's one of those guys in the mix at that nickel spot tells me they might be getting a little more specialized with what they're going to do at that position instead of having a guy like Domann out there who you don't want to take off the field ever. I expect them to mix and match there a little bit more, and they've got a ton of versatility at the outside linebacker spot. That the edge rusher, as is now officially listed on the roster, so that gets a little bit interesting too. And I think they'll have some specialized situations where you may want a slightly bigger, more linebackery type of nickel player versus somebody who maybe looks more like a defensive back.
Vogues, does Nebraska have the personnel to dictate and have a matchup advantage with that dreaded tight end or running back matchup? Do they have a guy you think is going to be able to hold up against the run in the Big Ten if Iowa or Wisconsin wants to spread the field a little bit but still go power? Wisconsin's known for running on throwing downs. They love going out of the shotgun, the pin and pull, and they get 9 on 3rd and 7 running out of the shotgun. Nebraska's personnel, do they have enough options to hang against phone booth downhill run games, but also transition and cover against a Purdue? Do you like the lineup on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I think so for the most part. I mean, with the number of linebackers we've just mentioned, so far this morning, they've got a lot of options there. I think a lot of it depends on what happens on the defensive line. And you look at, someone like Devin Drew, who's just arriving, how quickly can he get up to speed? And I'm not super worried about that. I mean, the guy's played 2 seasons of Power 5 football elsewhere. I think he'll be there and be pretty ready to go. Maybe not full go by that first game, just be an adjustment period. But can they be stout enough on the defensive line? Because holding up against a run game like Wisconsin's, et cetera, really starts there. Now, the kind of 3rd and 7 shotgun run stuff, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And that's where you do have to worry, I think, a little bit about, okay, it's 3rd and 7. We're going to go with maybe our smaller nickel package if that's how that ends up working out. And teams can exploit that. And a lot of that just comes down to how good of a tackler are you? Can you read and react quickly? But they've got enough veterans in that linebacker group that I think they should be able to hold up. They should be in a pretty good spot.
Mark,
Kraynak,
we cannot hear you.
Are you muted, bud?
Yeah. Tricky guys. So, Brandon, a lot's been made about Donovan Raiola, speaking of Wisconsin, and how the offensive line is firing off the ball now, as opposed to walling people off in more of a true zone scheme. From what you know, is that a little counter to, say, college football trends at large right now, to where Nebraska's looking at it and saying, while defenses have evolved to essentially be smaller and quicker and spread out, we think there's an opportunity to bring back some of that, quote, power football, probably a misuse of the term, but to be a little bit more physical and exploit that. Is Nebraska a bit of an outlier in their offensive line approach compared to other offensive lines at large in college football?
I think it could be on a large scale sense if that ends up, and that's been the most consistent message we've heard throughout the season: fire off the ball, fire off the ball. It could be a little bit because as offenses have evolved and you're going to run a lot of RPO stuff, a lot of that necessitates kind of a zone scheme, and every team has zone schemes and they're going to run that. But a little bit more of just kind of straight ahead football when Nebraska does choose to run the ball. I would count that. Well, I would certainly count it as a change from where Nebraska has been. And it probably stands out a little bit in college football as a whole. It may not stand out a ton in the Big Ten because the Big Ten's just a little bit, it's not behind the times. They're just, if you're a Wisconsin and Iowa, a Northwestern, kind of these straight ahead run games, even a Michigan State last year, with Kenneth Walker, you've got a ton of incentive to just kind of keep doing it. If you're winning in this league doing it that way, you're probably going to be able to take that run game and have success against a bunch of different teams as well.
Brandon Vogel's with us here, a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, those teams you listed off that have a real strong downhill running game, they got one thing in common. And that's that they all, at some point in time, especially down near the goal line, are going to bring in a fullback. So my question to you, will we see a fullback in any way, shape, or form this season on the field for Nebraska, whether it be a tight end coming into the backfield and leading the way? I mean, not necessarily a guy who's truly called a fullback on the roster, but do you think that that'll be a part of Mark Whipple's offense and Mark Whipple's run game?
Yeah, good question. Now I'm trying to process who that could even be.
Brewington, maybe?
I think what's that?
Brewington, maybe? Chancellor Brewington?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously saw them kind of highlight him in a blocking role numerous times in goal line / inside the 5 situations a year ago. And he's proven his ability in that regard. I mean, I think that's part of, with where Whipple has come from, you could realistically say, yeah, maybe it is a tight end's role to slide in there and be your de facto fullback. If I felt a little bit better about the tight end depth at the moment, because you've got Vogel, you've got Brewington, you've got Hickman, despite Brewington kind of showing his in those motions across the formation there, his ability to do that. He's not a guy that you put him in the backfield, people are going to think what's up. So I almost wonder if even at a slim down stage, if somebody like Yant isn't an option there, and of course you've got numerous walk-ons who potentially could fill a role such as that as well. So it'll be interesting to see what Nebraska does. I mean, it'll just be strange to see Nebraska if it gets under center inside the 5. It's been a while since we've had that.
Vogue's Bill Busch spoke earlier this week, such a motivator, but is placing a premium on excellence when it comes to special teams. A, could you have played special teams for Bill Busch? B, where would you have wanted to play? Could you have been as good as Ramir Johnson's been this camp?
Okay. Well, I wouldn't have been good enough to play special teams for Bill Busch. Would I have been willing? Would I have been receptive to that approach? I think I would have. I really liked what he had to say about Ramir Johnson. And I think that's the attitude Nebraska has probably been missing and needs to have on special teams. So you take a guy who used to get the ball occasionally on special teams and say, I'm moving you up here, and it's because you're a dude. This is a promotion. And for those of us, myself included, who, aren't – for me, special teams is punting, kicking. It's the most obvious part you can see in the return game. Everything else that happens out there is important. You just don't get it. I mean, you literally don't see it on the TV if you're watching the game on TV. So that said, I'm kind of a prima donna. I need the ball in my hands to fully maximize my talents. So I'd say I decline your promotion. I'll stay back here and I'll get you 2 touchdowns.
Related to that, he had mentioned that Anthony Grant is if they had to go out and play today, he's the kick returner. And you're kind of hearing similar things at running back, where he appears to have really made an impression on everybody. Your take on Grant and whether or not he can be that bell cow, and do you agree that it seems like they're sort of counting on him to do that? They want to get the ball in his hands in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, it's been so far an impressive fall camp for him. And, I think back to the spring game, and I think back to what I thought after watching that spring game live. He had the best play in that game, in my opinion. The run that he had and the cut that he made to bounce that outside. And I know they weren't tackling at that point, and et cetera, but it just kind of leapt off the screen for me. When that happened, and going back and rewatching it again as some of this talk has bubbled up around Grant, I'm like, okay, I could see that. And adding him in on kickoff return, kickoff return it's becoming a pretty thankless job, because with moving kickups off, so many of them are just automatic touchbacks. Like, you don't even mess with it. Like, you have to be really discerning. You have to want to be good, I think, at kickoff return if you're that return guy. And the fact that Anthony Grant is there tells me not just that he's talented and quick and can see the field, but he has that judgment that Bill Bush is looking for, because that's another, I think, change / advantage of having somebody like Bush in that spot is, or at least I feel like the standard has already been set pretty high. And if you're not going to get it done, if you're like me, if you're just back there trying to get touchdowns and, every 90% of returns come out to the 17, but maybe you do take 2 into opposing territory, well, that's not going to cut it in this regime, I don't think.
Vogues, a thought. What's ideal? And you're big on field position. You've done a lot of research, and you've written quite a bit, and it's important. Last night, got home from the Hail Varsity Club, and it was Nebraska night that morphed into Michigan State night. All right, on BTN. So I'm watching TV. I see Nebraska donkey punch Stoops in Oklahoma. Great. Remember 2001. Then it fast forwards into the 2014 thriller where Nebraska is getting curb stomped, and then they have a chance to win it at the end, where a defense plays pretty lights out and forces 3 turnovers. Tommy Armstrong's just not in rhythm until he finally gets hot. Hits a couple passes at the end, and Nebraska's got a chance to handle it. And that game was just fascinating to watch from a sense of Sadler and Fultzy, two greats that are gone too soon, pinning each other's offense inside the 5, and it was just a mess for both offenses. A lot of possessions. When we talk about starting field position, refresh for me what's normal and what's a good goal for Nebraska, so it's not having to drive 80 or 75. Look how Iowa's won the last few against Nebraska, where their starting field position's been in the second half. I mean, it all adds up, is I guess what I'm asking. What's a good goal here moving forward?
Yeah, so I haven't looked recently enough to feel like I have any specifics on where teams were a year ago, but generally, if all season, so kickoffs, punts, every drive you have, if you end up averaging at the 30-yard line, at your own 30-yard line, so 70 yards to go, you're going to be in a pretty decent spot. I think most years Nebraska under Frost has been around 72 yards to go, 77. So, the 28-yard line. A team like Iowa is consistently at the 32 or the 33. So, I mean, really, so you're talking about Nebraska, which has been in bad shape. You're talking about Iowa, which has been in very good shape out of necessity. But you're just talking about large sample sizes, too. So, 2-3 yards make a big difference if you average that out over the course of, you got 13, 14 drives a game times 12. You're talking 150 instances where you have 4 or 5 less yards to go in the case of Nebraska compared to an Iowa. So if Nebraska ends up around the the 30 on average at the end of the year, I would think they'd be in a pretty good spot. Anything more than that or anything less than that, which would be better field position, they'd be in a really good spot.
It'd be interesting to see how many of the desirable or plush field position starts Nebraska's capitalized on over the years, where they've not had their heels pinned back, but they're actually starting at their own 40 or midfield, or God forbid you get a return into someone else's territory versus allowing a return into someone else's territory or a house call, just to see how that hit rate is. Brandon Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine, managing editor at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogel's last thought. What do you think about Caffey to Texas, that transfer?
Ooh. Yeah, strange and unfortunate situation there, I think, for everyone involved, because, Nebraska obviously had a really good player who, through whatever, I still don't know if I've totally sorted through what exactly happened there, and maybe it'll never happen. But as Jacob Padilla said when that news came, he's like, it was the only way this could end. Of course she ended up in Texas. I haven't looked at Texas's roster recently to know if that's a particular hole for them to fill. It's even worse if it's not. They're like, yeah, we'll take her just to spite Nebraska. But good for her. It's obviously a really good spot for her to make an impact and be on a team that is as much in the national title chase every year as Nebraska is. So happy for Kayla. Smarts a little bit, though, if you're a Nebraska volleyball fan.
Well, especially because an assistant coach down at Texas is Jordan Larson. Or you sit there and you go, man, how are you going to come and steal our players, Jordan?
Yeah, that one, that adds a little salt to the wound, and with Akana there as well. I mean, Kathy and Akana were two really, really good players who were really, really important to Nebraska's season last year, and now they're down on the 40 acres. So tough breaks, but that's okay. We'll get the game, we'll get the matches started, and everyone will be able to focus on that.
Bogues, have a good weekend, bud. We'll get caught up next week and talk some more ball. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Storm Chasers fans. A 6-game homestand against St. Paul is upcoming, and it all begins on August 2nd. That night is free on the green, which means free berm tickets if you show your FNBO card. The following night is library night, and more whispering because you can't talk loud in the library, which is why I avoid libraries. Dollar Beer Night is August 4th, and that's also Military Appreciation Night, two of my favorite things. You'll see patriotic jerseys and a whole lot of Budweiser. Nothing more American than that. The weekend slate includes fireworks on Friday night, camo jerseys with an in-game jersey auction on Saturday, and a family fun day on Sunday, which includes Bark in the Park, canned food for tickets, and kids running the bases after the game. Get your tickets now before it's too late. We'll see you soon.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kraynak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out. Excellent strategy, sir.
Back in, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, back in studio. Mark Kraynak from his home studio as well. And it's pretty funny to see this text thread going on. Vogue's putting his hand up in the meeting room saying, the StreamYard mishap, my bad.
Yeah, where we couldn't hear his audio.
Yeah, and God love Vogues for being accountable. And Kraynak, you chime in, and you offer the encouragement. Well, as long as you make mistakes at 100 miles per hour.
I mean, at this stage, it's okay.
And no fear of failure, right? So
that's going to really ring true for Frost this year.
Mm-hmm. That's well, you're kind of practicing what you preach now, aren't you? With if you truly have no fear, you're secure enough to make changes to your staff. Mm-hmm. Guys that helped you get the Power 5 gig. You've made those changes. You've brought in people, some you know and some you don't know. And then now you're in full delegation mode while trying to be a CEO and oversee, which your thrill in football's been, let's design some really awesome plays and some schemes and go put up 100 on somebody. That's the ultimate in, I'm really showing no fear because I'm putting my trust in the hands of a collective group, a group on the offensive side of the ball I've not ever worked with.
You know, one other thing I'm interested in seeing this year, knowing that he's not going to be so heavily involved in like down and distance and formations and all those sorts of things, if he is going to be able to step back a little bit and, you know, chime into Whipple from time to time about just like keep it on the ground, right? Let's take a shot. Like things like that rather than right 48 XY stick, you know, on 3 and like worrying about personnel and all those things, but more like general game management situations. Like, does Nebraska get better at that? Does Nebraska get better at managing the clock? Because, again, you have this free set of eyes in Frost where he's looking at the game as a whole. He's looking at momentum. He's looking at the balance of offense versus defense and whether or not folks are too tired, you know, who's fresh, who's not. That could stand to benefit Nebraska, too, as much as just getting somebody else coming in to run the offense specifically. Like, yeah, that could have its own benefits. But bigger than that could be Frost looking at the game as a whole and saying, you know what? All right, we got 38 seconds left. All right, we're going to get a timeout here. And he's just focused on things like that rather than specific formations and calls and plays.
Let's welcome in the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, with us. Sharpie, how's the weekend, bud? Thanks for the time.
Hey, good morning, guys. Hard to believe now 3 weeks away before I'm talking to you guys in Ireland.
That's right. Are
Absolutely.
you going, Gary?
I am not going. I will live vicariously through both of you clowns.
Capital C on the clowns part. But yeah, Kraynak and I were doing the old group text with our old boy Ted that's over in Ireland and trying to get the I's dotted, T's crossed, and some of that happening with this scrimmage this morning, Sharpie. A take from you on, well, the week that's been. We've had plenty of coaches, we've had plenty of players, and we had the head man yesterday talking quarterbacks. What'd you think?
Well, first and foremost, I know it's going to be brutally hot today. It's supposed to be 65 at kickoff in Dublin in 3 weeks. So just hold on for that temp for a football game. You know, this week is, I think camp has gone probably according to plan. You know, when you listen to coaches, I try and pick out players that are unsolicited that are brought up. Maybe unsolicited or, you know, a coach sees an opening, so he mentions a guy that has really shown out, like a Barrett Ruud mentioning Ernest Hausman the other day. You know, I think I listened closely to those. I think this camp has gone as to be expected. You know, the word tense has been used, a sense of urgency, a sense of purpose, business-like. I thought Scott yesterday, you know, give him credit. He was pretty open. I mean, he talked about Casey Thompson's injury. He talked that, you know, that Casey Thompson is, you know, right now number one. He's been kind of shy to do that of late. I thought Scott looked comfortable yesterday. But you know what? It's been a camp. Knock on wood. They haven't had any injuries. And today will tell a lot. You know, the game speeds up a little bit. There's hitting involved, and there's going to be a crowd. It's interesting note of the scrimmage today is that this is the day that they welcome all the players, former players, back to watch practice. So it's not like they're going through a half pad or shells practice or in their underwear. They are going full go, first scrimmage, and maybe the most important scrimmage of fall camp, and they've got an audience of former players that are going to be there. So I'll be interested to hear some of the insights on what the atmosphere was like, the intensity. But first and foremost, no injuries, and it sounds like they're making progress. But the same things we won't know still exist for 3 weeks is offensive line and safety. But I will tell you that I've heard great reports. This has been a great start to the camp for Tommy Hill.
Interesting. Okay. That's a name I haven't heard a ton about yet, so that's quality and very good athlete, obviously, the transfer from Arizona State. Gary, I know in this line of work, you get the questions year-round, right? Like, give me your prediction. What's going to happen this year? Right? I just do the weekend show, and I get it all the time. I can't even imagine what you get or what Chris gets. It's got to be a daily thing. And when we were talking earlier today, it was just like, it's so hard to predict anyways. I think it's impossible to predict this year when you consider got an offensive coordinator from Pitt. You got a quarterback from Texas. Your top receiver targets from LSU. Your top running back is a JUCO guy. Melding all that together and trying to formulate how that's going to go is, it's ridiculous. That said, what's your prediction, Gary? How does that all work out?
I'm below the win total. I think jumping from 3 to 7 is pretty impressive. But you're right, Mark. I've dubbed them the most interesting team in college football because of what's on the line in year 5, with who's in charge of the program, what happened in the offseason, all of the new players that came in, the new faces that could be your best players, and then blending the coaching staff. Oh, by the way, the defensive side, I really like Eric Chenander. I think Eric Chenander has got a good culture going on that side of the ball, but they have to replace some really good players. I think they're the most interesting team because of all of these things that have to come together, and that's why it's fascinating to see what's going to happen here in 3 weeks is what does it look like? Whatever Nebraska's doing between now and then, their number one goal is to beat Northwestern by 1 point. They have to win that football game. They have to find a way to win that football game. Because if you're going to instill confidence and belief in coaches, players, fan base, media, local, national, you go and you win a football game like that is kind of quirky. And for the first time, really since Scott has begun, where everything appears to be weird to begin a season, whether it's year 1 or year 5, you're able to overcome those challenges and win a game, regardless if it's a team you beat 56-7 last year and are projected to the bottom of the Big Ten. You need to win those football games. So, yes, they're an interesting team. We don't know what's going to happen. That's why I don't think the word dread of the opener should be used. I think it's anticipation and very much interesting and intrigue on what's going to happen. But I think I think 7 wins is attainable. But, gosh, if you press me, then we got to do the math on when you're going to get those 7 and what the first month and the last month look like, which I think are the 2 important months for the health of this program.
Gary, we had Gerry DiNardo on the show yesterday. We just heard from him in the Rewind segment. And from his time going to practice both Nebraska and Northwestern, he thinks it's going to be a hard-fought game and went as far as to say he thinks this one's going to come down to the final play of the game. It's going to be exciting. And I want to get your take. If Nebraska were to beat Northwestern in the final play of the game, what would that do to your opinion on Nebraska hitting this win total in 2022? Does it give you confidence that they've won a 1-score game, or does it make you a little bit nervous that, this Northwestern team might not be the top of the pack in the Big Ten West this season, and they took Nebraska down to the final play? Well, which side of the coin are you on there?
Well, first of all, when I saw the line that started at 9.5 and now it's 12.5 somewhere else, that's way too high. All that matters for the opening game, because it's quirky, is to win the football game. Find a way to win the football game. Now, you want to have a tension convention in the state of Nebraska. Get to the middle of the fourth quarter or late in the fourth quarter, and it's a 1-score game or the game is tied. That's where the attention to detail benefits you in the end. That has been a point of emphasis since last December. Is a guy like Bill Bush, who feels really good about Timmy Bleakroyd, that he'll come in and kick that field goal. I think it's just we don't know what's going to happen. We think we do, but let's be honest, guys. I bet there's some coaches that are also wondering the same questions that we are. What's going to happen when we get into crunch time again? Either the new guys, what they do, or guys that have been here before going, uh-oh, here we go again, or they say, we're not doing this again.
That's the total question, right? You're going to be in close games. You're going to be in situations that you've been in the last several years, Sharpie, with the Big Ten and tight ball games. And how do you respond? How do you react? Do you have a guy that can go make a play or stop a momentum-draining play or big play? I mean, that's what it's about. It's a culmination of a lot of things. And can Nebraska just be different and better this season with new faces and voices and players? I want to talk about the quarterback, Casey Thompson. Frost said what he said yesterday. Casey's obviously feeling a little bit better with that thumb. When it comes to chemistry, though, what are you hearing? How's that aspect of him in Lincoln going when it comes to, the talent and the experience, check mark, when it comes to the other 10 he's playing with? How's that work in progress coming?
He's a quarterback. I don't think it's, oh, my gosh, I love Casey, man. We're going out. We're doing all this. I'm not getting that vibe, but I'm getting the vibe of he's the quarterback, and he's running the show, and we need the quarterback along with 10 other guys on the offense to be good for us to have success. Casey is a quote-unquote professional quarterback. He's been around the block. As we get closer to the season, we're not really talking about, oh, my gosh, Casey Thompson's got to do blank. We're kind of, Casey Thompson needs to avoid this. Now, I think Nebraska will cut down greatly on their turnovers. I can't tell you about the penalties, but is Casey Thompson, guys, going to be a game manager, or is he going to be a game changer, or is he somewhere in between? Or does he benefit from an offensive coordinator that will play to his strengths, and can he keep plays alive somehow if that offensive line breaks down? Because that's the thing that is still in play is, can that offensive line protect a quarterback who will not have the leg ability to keep plays alive like your previous quarterback did, and they both have similar passing percentages when under pressure. So this is all going back to a previous question. It's all going to have to meld together on how to figure out to play away from your weaknesses and play to your strengths. But I don't think Casey will throw the ball away unnecessarily. I think they will cut down on turnovers. I think they will have more of a quick game. But the bottom line, to make Casey Thompson look good, handing the ball off with success over and over and over again will make Casey Thompson look like a really good quarterback. He had Bijan Robinson last year that he was able to do that for. He doesn't have Bijan Robinson this year. He's at Texas going for the Heisman. So I will be curious to see how he operates, but I don't think Mark Whipple will put him in bad situations.
Go ahead, Kraynak.
Well, Elijah's saying we got a break.
Yeah, we
got to go.
Time for us to get out.
Yeah.
We got to go already.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I left Gerry hanging there. I was going to ask you a great question, but I can't because Elijah says we have to break.
No.
Yeah.
Till next time. That's a hell of a. This second hour has been a bad second half. At least we fumbled the goal line a couple of times.
We don't need Champagne Urbana second hour Hail Varsity.
We just need champagne. Sharpie, we love you, brother. We'll catch up. Okay.
Hey, thanks, guys. Have a great weekend and stay cool.
We'll do, bud. There he is. We'll talk to you on Monday with Hail Varsity.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
A Hurrdat Media Production.